Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about how to buy a house with $0. With $0 down, you can purchase a house in America today. Now, before we get started, I do want to preface that this is not my investment strategy. Would I purchase a house with $0 down? It's a possibility, but all of my parameters would still need to be in place for me to purchase a house with $0 down. That means I must have an emergency fund to cover all the expenses. I must have the ability to cash flow on the property so that it brings me in money. I would not do this for a primary residence because I want the mortgage to be as small as possible on my primary. But for an investment property, this is definitely doable if the cash flow is there. And for cash flow back in 2020, 2021, I would look for around $700 to $1,000 a month in cash flow. But in this market, we're going to look for about $300 to $400 a month in cash flow. That feels safe enough for me. So if you do a zero down method in 2024, you should at least want close to $400 a month, if not more. And so before we get started, is this something that is possible and should be done? Depends on the situation. Have I done this? I have not, because again, I didn't find deals that would cash flow like this. Could I have done it? Absolutely. Would I have cash flowed the way that I do now? No. And obviously, if you put more money in the deal, you'll cash flow more money from the deal. But it's all about pros and cons. You have to weigh that decision for yourself. You also want to look at the location and the area. Of course, you'll be able to find better, more deals in which you can cash flow more in worse areas. But in more high class areas, there's going to be less cash flow available to you, depending on the state and city that you live in. Now, how do you find a I'm not going to go into how you find a property because that's a separate video in itself. But how do you pay $0 down for a property? This is how we're going to get into it. One, you must have some type of money to actually purchase the property with a loan that may be a conventional loan, which is about 5% down, or a FHA loan that's 3.5% down, or a VA loan that's 0% down. Even with a VA loan, you still have closing costs. So when people say 0% down, they're not factoring in closing costs. Now, in order to get the closing costs taken care of, you're going to have either the bank with a promotion or the seller pay all of your closing costs. That is definitely going to have to happen. On top of that, you may need a seller's credit of about 5% to put towards the down payment. This now alleviates you of the liability of putting 5% down on a conventional or even 3.5% down on a FHA. And with the seller paying all of your closing costs, you're now going to have 0% down into the property. There are also banks that will give you $500 back for doing a first-time home buyer questionnaire or listening to some of their prompts, where they'll give you money just for doing that. On top of that, there are grants that are available to first-time home buyers, minorities, and other communities to where you can actually get 10, 15, 20,000, even $7,500 in order to buy your first property. So when you look at your state and you simply Google first-time home buyer grants or loans or whatever that's available to you, you'll be able to find something. Some of them are to be paid back, but most are actually not to be paid back. So as long as you live in the house for a certain amount of time or you don't sell it within a certain amount of time, a lot of these grants are yours to keep. $20,000 down, boom, you already have some free equity in the home as long as you stay there 3+ years, depending on what type of agreement you get into. So now we just talked about seller's credit. We just talked about the seller paying the closing costs. We also talked about the banks giving you credits for first-time home buyers. We talked about grants for first-time home buyers. There's a lot of USDA loans. Those people are going to be more eager to sell, especially in those rural areas, because they're not going to have as many buyers. And then you have rehab properties that you might need a FHA 203K loan in order to get into. You might have to purchase that outright. And then when you refinance, you get all your money back out after it's fixed up and nice. Now, FHA 203K loans typically have higher interest rates because they know that you're going to have to refinance the property once it is up to code, once it is updated and looks nice and prime, right? So, for example, in a market like this where we know interest rates are going to be going down, if you get an FHA 203K loan and the property value has decreased due to high interest rates and being in bad condition, you purchase the property, you fix it up now, it's worth more, or it may be worth, yeah, so it'll be worth more because you just fixed it up. It can't possibly be worth less after fixing it up. But maybe the prices went down overall for the comps in the area. However, there should still be some margin for you to make a profit, or you can at least refinance into a better loan where you're not even paying half the cost of what it would have been to buy it brand new, and yet you have a smaller mortgage because interest rates also went down in that time frame where you were building the home. So now you have a home that is worth twice what you paid for it. You might not be able to sell it for a profit at this time, but that mortgage that you're carrying is so small that you can rent it out and cash flow tremendously. So that's another way to look at it. FHA 203K loans are underutilized. I would still wait for interest rates to go down a little bit before getting an FHA 203K loan because, again, it is going to have a higher interest rate. And we know as rates go down, that FHA 203K loan rate will also go down over time. So it's good to start thinking about those type of strategies. It's good to start thinking about how to get into that market. I have to look at what percentage you need to put down for a FHA 203K loan, but it has FHA in the name, so I would assume 3.5% to 5% down. So yeah, that's something to think about, especially if you're using it as a primary residence in the beginning at the very least. So yeah, that is how you can get 0% down into a home. Again, there's a lot of parameters that you have to look at. A lot of people get so eager when they hear 0% down that they don't think. So I have to preface that if you don't have things in place, emergency fund, budget, cost control, understanding, do you need to refinance out of this, or can you still hold on to it without refinancing? That's going to tell me if it's really going to cash flow for you, or if you're going to be in a tough spot after all the work and construction is done, right? And then you also got to wait on construction time. So you have to carry that note without getting paid for a certain amount of time if you do decide to go with the FHA 203K. Now, if you're buying a property outright and you're getting all these seller closing costs and commissions paid for, great, great, great. All that sounds and is good, right? So instead of the buyer dropping the price, you might even go up $5,000 on the price just so that they can pay you all that back and have the seller also recoup some of that money, right? So it's a win-win. You just have to think. So when you see houses go for $5,000 or $10,000 more, you don't know what type of negotiation was done to where that buyer didn't actually have to pay anything out of pocket, and they just said, "Hey, seller, pay me this $10,000 that I'm adding to the value of the home." Right? These are the type of things that are worked into the deal. So someone might say, "This home is only worth $300,000. Why did it go for $310,000?" It's because they got the $10,000 back. They actually didn't pay $310,000 for the house. They paid $300 for the home, right? So these are the type of conversations that you need to be having with your real estate agent to understand what deals can we work to not only make me happy, but also the seller happy. I'd rather have that $10,000 up front at 6% than $10,000 off the property. There's so much I can do with 10 grand. I mean, just as an investor, I just made 28% in the stock market. Come on now. I could definitely work with an extra 10,000. So again, it's really up to you how you utilize money. Some people might have to work to say, you know what, I'd rather have the 10,000 off the house than to have it in my pocket. Makes sense depending on your situation, and it also depends on how financially astute you are. and how you're going to utilize that money, right? If you need that for renovations and repairs, that may be another reason why you take out the money. Is it making you money right away? No, but it may be saving you money in the long run to have these repairs done and to have your, your foundation right. I always make sure that my foundation is good with any property that I buy. So that's another thing that you need to look at, right? The first thing I do is foundation, 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 and then everything else comes after. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You know I post every single day at 8 a.m. daily on YouTube and on Rumble, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Peace.